We're rolling. Okay. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Very good, thank you.
How you doing?
Pardon?
How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well.
Today is September 26, 2018. We are in Berkeley, California, at the home of
Winifred Hess.
And we are here to talk about your late father. Could you please tell me where he was born, when he was born, and what kind of family he was born into?
He was born in Liberty, North Carolina, and he was the eldest of 5 children, and he was, the father was somewhat restless, I understand it. He didn't settle down to one job, and he felt that after the Civil War that the South was not functioning very well, so started to move west, and the family took the family west from North Carolina to Missouri to the Oklahoma land rush and ultimately to Arizona. And so my father went to Park College in Missouri, and
What year was your father born?
1888. And so they ended up in Arizona, where they were.
Where in Arizona did they reside?
Pardon?
Where did he live in Arizona?
Tucson.
Tucson.
Tucson. Went
Tucson,
to the university. The family was in Wilcox at first.
Uh-huh.
And
Yes.
in fact, when Dad got there, the family had been there for some months already, and were still living in a tent on their homestead. And my father said, "This will never do, Dad." And so he promptly built them a house. I think it was an adobe house.
At what age?
Oh, whatever, 17, 18, something like that.
Did he grow up did he have a religious background, your father? Was he?
Very much so. Primarily from his mother. Now, her father was a minister, Presbyterian minister in
Excuse me?
North Carolina.
Your grandmother's...
My father's grandfather.
Right.
Maternal grandfather. And there's a book that was written about ministers in the early days, and he's certainly has mentioned his.
Presbyterian, you said?
Pardon?
Presbyterian?
Presbyterian.
Presbyterian.
Yes. And
so was your grandmother the kind of person who read the Bible, once a day or a few times a week, go to church on Sunday?
went to church, yes. In fact, that's where my folks met, was in church.
What's your father's full name?
My father's full name?
Full name.
Walter Clay Lowdermilk. I presume named after Henry Clay.
Henry Clay.
Yes, who was a great conciliator. And anyway, I have heard from my aunt that Dad's mother was at around the dining table of an evening. She was working with the children, and that was their time to discuss and do things together, and especially religious background and training. Dad entered a contest where you had to memorize Proverbs, and I still, think how on earth you do that, because everything is separate. You can't make it into easily into a word to help you remember. And so I asked Dad, how did you do? Well, he won it, but that was, again, when he was, high school age, something like that.
Now, so he comes from a religious background. What does his father do? Or he's...
This is, he did all sorts of things. He was running a sawmill in North Carolina. I don't know what he was doing in Missouri.
Arizona. What was he doing in Arizona?
He was postmaster. He was, then he went a little bit to California to, this is all before my time.
Of course, of course. No, I'm just trying to get a background
Yes.
of your father's...
He was, as my aunt said, he was restless. He did different things.
Now, your father, he's born in 1888, and I mean, he's, you know, living at the turn of the century, of the 20th century, from, you know, the 19th century to the 20th century. Not a lot of people get an education at that. Like, education is really, you know, rare. For the elites, it's common, but in your father's time, it's very kind of rare. I mean, he finishes. What's his like high school schooling background? I'm not talking about higher education. I'm talking about elementary.
I don't understand how it went, but he was in this at Park College, which was actually, I think, more of a high school. And
in Tucson.
No. This is Missouri, and so the family had moved out and left him there in Missouri to finish the year at Park College, and then he joined.
So when he joined them in Tucson, he was already finished with high school, or roughly.
Roughly,
Okay.
yes.
Where does he go to college?
Now
What's his
he
first step
went to
in
the
higher
University of
education?
Arizona,
Okay.
and I think he was there. I don't know that he was there 4 years, but he was at least there 3 years, and then he got a Rhodes Scholarship, and went to England for. He got his master's also at
What was his
Oxford.
master's degree in?
Forestry.
Forestry.
Yeah.
And a Rhodes Scholar.
A Rhodes Scholar, that's right. And that's when he was on the way to Oxford, was that summer he met my mother.
In England?
No, in Tucson.
In Tucson.
And or in Arizona. They
So
lived in
right
Wilcox.
before he left?
He left.
Before he left for
Yes.
Oxford, he met your mother.
Yes, at church. And they all, I think all have held hands during that time. Then he didn't see her for 11 years. And then he came to visit. And 2.5 days he proposed. 2.5 days he left and came back and married her. And then they went off to China. Amazing.
And, oh wow. So he goes to Oxford. He does his master's degree in forestry.
Yep.
How long?
In Germany. That was 3 years.
And then he went to Germany?
Yes, for some of the research and forestry.
Do you know what he was specializing in at that point
No.
or time? No.
No.
And he goes to Germany. This is pre-World War I. This is
Yes,
before the
that's right.
the Great War.
That's right.
So he's in Germany during the time of Kaiser Wilhelm.
Yes. Just studying.
Do you know where in Germany he's studying? Is he in Berlin? Is he in Hamburg? Is he in Munich?
No, it's down in the Black Forest.
Where the Black Forest?
Yes.
So he went to the Black Forest.
Yes.
So that's like...
That's you studying forestry.
Of course. I'm putting the pieces
And
together as we're speaking right
and
now.
the
Yeah,
Germans were great at forestry.
Wow.
They've been doing forestry for,
Of course.
yeah. So then
And then...
the war broke out, and then he and I guess a couple of other Rhodes Scholars as well went to work in Belgium with the Belgium Relief Commission run by Herbert Hoover.
Sure. So he was involved in that?
Yes, he was there for, I don't know, a year more. Anyway, it was kind of fun. We went back in 1938. He took us back, the family, back to
Belgium?
yes, to
Germany?
Belgium, to also the wonderful mansion where he had lived. And as we were walking up to the building, there was a man who passed by and turned around and looked at Dad, and then stopped and turned around and began to talk. And he had been a servant at the time of the Belgian Relief Commission and remembered my father from that time. Amazing.
What year did your parents get married?
1922,
1922.
yes.
He got married at kind of older.
Yes, Mother was 32 and he was, 35.
35. 1922. So after he's wow. So he goes to China after the war.
First World War, yes.
Yeah, after the First World War.
Yes,
He goes to China.
yes, 1922.
And where does he go in China?
He was working out of Nanking.
Nanking, okay.
And
Manchuria, right? Isn't that Manchuria? Manchuria?
no, China.
China, okay.
It was the capital of China at that time.
And what is he doing there? What's he, like, what kind of job did he get?
Associated, well, I guess it was under the mission board. However, it wasn't, he never claimed to be a missionary in any way. He was associated with the university, and
But he went to China because of your mother,
yeah,
right? Because she
Yes.
was a missionary.
yes.
Just for the record, explain to me what a missionary is.
I guess there are other varieties of missionaries, but she was went to West China, and she was opening girls' schools primarily, and she was helping to run kindergarten and to a great extent work for women.
Okay. Emancipation?
Pardon?
Emancipation of women? As
Yes,
much as you could in that
unbinding
time?
feet and things like that.
But this is all
And
under
giving them schooling.
education, and this is
Yes.
also under the banner of religion.
Yes.
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 So your father goes to China with her.
And he's working
After
on
they're married.
famine prevention. Yes.
He's working there as a famine prevention. This is
22 to 27.
1922. Are you born there?
No, I was born after they got back.
Okay. So they're in China for 5 years. What was most of your father's work in China? You said that he worked a lot to prevent famine.
This was where he developed his, I guess, really career and his mind, anyway, of man's relationship to the earth. Not just forestry, but man's relationship to the earth, what he's doing to the earth, what is good, what is bad, what is helpful, what is not, and so on. So he became really a very early conservationist, and he was taking trips all over China, going to the ends of the Great Wall out in Siberia, and by Tibet, and especially he became interested in the Lesel area of northwest China.
So forestry was just the door
Expanding.
It was just the opening.
Yes,
Then it developed.
exactly.
So he's in China. He's experiencing famine. Does the irrigation part of his career come in here also? Does it
Yes,
start to kick
yes,
in there? Yeah,
absolutely.
Irrigation, how to get villages, how to get them fresh water, how to
What do you do with the rivers?
right? How do you divert them?
Yes.
How do you this?
And
yeah,
what's happening, what they've done with, say, with the Yellow River, they kept building dikes. And so after a time, the river was running above the land. And is this good? It's dangerous.
Water could be
Anytime that dike breaks, you're
water could be a blessing and water could be a disaster.
we've certainly discovered that
Sure.
this year.
Sure. And so they come back from China, 1927, right? They come. Where do they come back to? Where do they move?
My mother's family home in Pasadena.
In Pasadena.
Which has always been somewhat of our
HQ, headquarters?
Yes, or at least for the family.
Yeah.
And whenever they were off someplace, we spent many Christmases and holidays in Pasadena.
I just want to ask you a quick question before we get to Pasadena. Did your father ever tell you stories about his experience in the relief committee in Belgium during the First World War? Did he ever talk about it a lot, or?
Not a lot. Okay. When I was very little, my mother would only tell us Bible stories, and Dad used to tell us forest fire stories.
We'd give a little contra to the Bible stories. So your family comes back to Pasadena in 1927. Do they have are there any children in the family yet that were born in China?
Yes, my brother was adopted in China.
Okay.
And so there were the two of us. And Dad came up here to get his PhD.
In Berkeley?
In Berkeley.
And what was his PhD in?
Forestry. I guess I know he got involved with soil science as well. I mean, as I say, this is before my time.
I understand.
And anyway, so the family, my brother and mother and I, were in Pasadena with
the family?
my grandfather and grandmother and
he's doing his
aunts.
PhD here.
And then we joined him when I was about 6 months old.
Here in Berkeley.
Here in Berkeley. And, so then he joined the Forest Service here in Berkeley, the U.S. Forest Service.
Just a second.
Got hearing aids too.
So when you guys come back from China, when your parents come back from China and you're born, and your father's working for the California Forest Committee,
U.S. Forest
right?
Service.
U.S. Forest. So he's got a good job basically. I mean, it's and then the depression kicks in. Is he?
And they lost the first house they had up on the hill, and so then we were by an exchange of houses, and so then we ended up renting. We rented the house just down the street from us here, and whenever the landlady, who was in the big white house, was out in the yard, my mother was out in the yard, she would say, if you ever want to sell the southern half of that corner lot, let me know. And in the middle of the Depression, the owner said she was willing to sell.
Where did your mother have money from?
Partly from selling, and I guess some of the equity from the house that they lost. And that gave them the start.
Now, I'm going to fast forward a few years. So after the forestry, California Preservation Forestry, that you're, where does your father go on? Does he go on to do other things?
Then he was asked by Roosevelt, when he came in as president, to come back east and help start the Soil Conservation Service.
What is that?
As an associate director. Pardon?
What is that?
Soil Conservation Service? It's now a Natural Resource Conservation Service, but it was to help manage soil erosion, whatever, to take care of the land.
Did your father take Roosevelt's offer?
Yes, yeah.
Did he meet Roosevelt? Did he know him?
No.
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 But the administration called him, basically.
Yes.
So where do you guys move to?
Then we moved to Washington, D.C.
Okay.
However, they didn't know what the future was of this, because everything was getting started. Soil Conservation Service was in the interior at that point. So anyway, Dad went back east, and Mother and my brother and I stayed here in this house. And then it seemed to be permanent. So what happened was, for better or for worse, Dad was working very hard, and so my brother and I went to Pasadena and spent the next 2 years whereas my folks were in
DC.
Washington, except they came out to visit, and Mother had come out to live with us too, part-time. And then we all moved the furniture and everything to Washington.
After 2 years.
Yeah.
And how long were you in Washington, D.C. for?
That time, I was there 2 years. And then my father was called to travel the Europe and the Mediterranean to study old lands and what would happen to them and what we could learn from it. And,
so the government sends him on this,
yes.
for how long?
Well, it was, I guess the length of time was unknown, but it would be.
A year?
We were gone about a year and a half.
And this is right before the Second World War.
Correct. And in fact, we never finished it because the Second World War broke out.
Were you guys in Europe before the Second World War? You were.
Yes, this was 38 and 39.
Did you guys feel what was going on there? Or you were young.
Yeah, but we're well aware of it.
Yeah.
This was brought up. The Department of Agriculture is kind of reliving the brochure they have put out about Dad's talk of this trip, and he was asked to speak around the country, and it's 6,000 years of civilization has been the only bulletin from the Department of Agriculture that has been published every year consistently since, I guess it was started, which is I'm not sure when, but it's still being published. And that was of that trip.
What happens with your father during the Second World War?
Well, we came home, the war broke out while we were in the Middle East, and my brother...
Where in the Middle East were you guys?
Pardon?
Was that the first time that your father was in Palestine?
Yes, yes.
So he comes to Palestine on this trip. Are you with him?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. It's like 1938, 39?
That's right.
What are your memories from this trip to Palestine?
Lots of them. And...
where did you guys stay in Palestine?
I think it was, traveling all over, but also we're the American School of Archaeology Research, and in Jerusalem for the most part.
Wow.
And then I went to community school in Beirut, American Community School. My brother did also. So, we switched back and forth a lot between Beirut and Jerusalem.
Is this where your father starts to have his ideas about irrigation and water in Palestine? Is this like where...
Well, one of the things is it was such a pleasure to see the Jews in Palestine replenishing the land, improving it, making...
What did he think about that? How did that affect
it? Was wonderful. It's just rejuvenating, because we had seen miles and miles and miles of destruction, and visiting the old Roman lands that had been...
well, because the land of Israel, the land of Palestine, for 500 years under the Ottomans was completely neglected. And it was neglected. It was a wasteland.
Well, and why was it a wasteland, too? Okay.
Why?
And, of course, my father blamed goats a lot, and cutting down the trees is another one. His favorite, he took lots of slides, and his favorite picture was the trees of Lebanon, and there's a young tree of Lebanon growing just beyond the shade of the big trees, but there's just nothing but rocky, bare fields beyond. He says the promise of the future against the destruction of the past. And, that's you can rejuvenate to a great extent, yes. But he also, Palestine is a lot similar to California. And so you, as a Californian,
Yeah, continue, please.
you have...
First time I've heard somebody say that.
Really?
Please continue, please. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. Well, so you feel, as a Californian, you feel very much at home. You understand a lot more about the summer dry and the wet winters. And so he was also automatically realizing, what could you do about getting more water and where you could use it. Now, I understood when, we didn't know this, but when the memorial was given by President Katzir in Jerusalem for my dad's death, people were saying, we were told at that point that Israel has the Negev because of my father, and otherwise they wouldn't have gotten it. So anyway, this is his idea was to also get
To water
water to the south.
Okay, we're going to get to that, what they did with the Negev in the 50s already, because I know that he spent time in Israel already in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So this is his first trip to Palestine, and he sees the problem of water. There's a big problem of water.
Yep.
Part. Is he collaborating with the British? Is he like talking to them about his ideas, or not yet, or it's too premature, or he's just there to embrace?
No, I don't know that he was. Now he was on government business, official business.
Right.
So yes, there was help and exchange, and
Sure.
and at first they sent an armored car with us and 5 Tommies to tour Israel, Palestine.
You guys had a military escort, a British escort.
Yeah,
Really?
first time around, yes.
Really?
And then we were left on our own. So, but
Typical British.
then another later. Dad was one to, if he saw farmers doing something, he's liable to get out and help them, and see what they're doing and how they're doing it, and make friends that way. So we had stopped at a village. We were traveling with a Jewish family not family, but officials and separate cars, and Dad had stopped to thresh wheat, and. With farmers, and the Jewish friends came tearing back into town and said, "Let's get out of here." And we didn't know why. They said somebody had been killed the day before, and it was not a safe place to be.
Wow.
So anyway, we did leave, but that was Dad. You would get out and do the physical work, and also, he was one of the interesting things. He was always trying to learn from local people, not always the top down.
Right, but also look up.
But also learn from the people who had been doing things. Maybe they knew how to do something. Good idea.
Sure. So when the war breaks out, you guys are in Palestine? Where are you guys?
Actually, it was in Lebanon.
In Lebanon?
Yeah. Yes.
And there's
We had been expecting it, I guess you'd say. There was a German who was staying in the German pension where we were. And for better, for worse, he had no wife. He was by himself. Not knowing what he was doing, but he was buying up jewelry, which made us think that's an easy thing to transport. Now, why would he need a diamond necklace or diamond bracelet? We knew he had bought it. So we thought he was a spy. So we'd ask him, when's war going to break out? And he'd always say, no. But it was very interesting. He left the day before war broke out. And
when war breaks out, the U.S. government decides that you guys need to come home, even though America is not in the war yet.
That's right. Right.
You guys, is that what you guys do? You guys go back to the States?
Well, what were we going to do to continue our trip? We were going to go through Turkey to Russia and then west through Germany. Okay.
Get it? Not a good idea.
So we were having trouble anyway trying to get gas through Turkey and into Russia. So, but anyway, that whole part was
So you
was
guys
impossible.
left from
So
Lebanon
we came
back
home.
to the States?
So then we came back to the States.
Yeah.
Took
And-
a
And
boat.
does your father do any? Does he have any job, war effort job during the war? Government.
Well,
something-
his first job when he came back was to give talks around the country of what he had learned,
Sure.
and then back to Washington D.C. And then he was asked by China to come under Lend-Lease, I guess you would say, to West China to help them in growing more food. So he was
After the war.
no during the war.
During the war.
During the war, that's right. It was quite a trip that he took because he left by boat from New York and went down through the Panama Canal to the Pacific, down the coast of South America, around Cape Horn, Cape of Good Hope, and then over to Cape Horn. And then they stopped there in South Africa, and then he did fly up to Cairo, and then over India to the Hump. And he was recovering from this very severe heart attack at that. It was only, 2 years? And he was flying the Hump with no oxygen that we knew about anyway. So we had given him ammonia capsules to break in case he was feeling faint at that altitude. Anyway, he made the trip fine.
And how long was he in China for?
He was gone 18 months, I guess, or more. He was there a good year. And
And of course, this is the U.S. government giving its assistance to Chiang Kai-shek. This is the
yeah,
Republican.
he was there with. Oh no, it was later. I don't whether he was a colonel or not. I don't know. Something anyway. It was.
Let's talk about your father's connection with Palestine. He comes back again to Palestine.
Yes, we were. He was doing some consulting work in Morocco when Israel was established, and of course we were very pleased that.
And you were with him in Morocco? Or-
Yes,
Yeah, you guys
yes.
were with him. So you guys traveled with him a lot.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
till I got married,
Sure.
and so anyway, we were delighted with that. But then, as we came home from that, Dad said, "Well, we need to volunteer to help Israel." So.
Why?
Why? Because, as Mother said, for better or for worse, she said, "I'm a Zionist born, I'm a Zionist now, and I'll be a Zionist dead."
His mother said that?
My mother,
Your mother.
yes. And they had, this great association. Dad had written a book. Well, anyway, Justice Brandeis, when we got back from our trip in '39, one of the refugee ships had come in to Beirut Harbor because they let people ashore to get kill the rats on the ship, and then they had to get back on the ship, and Israel.
Palestine.
England was saying that they couldn't have any more people come in
These were
because
Jewish refugees from Germany.
Europe.
Yeah.
Yes,
So, and you guys were in Beirut when their boat was,
Yes.
and they wouldn't let them out.
that's right.
Right.
And put them back on the ship, and then the ship, as it turned out, they ran ashore in Palestine, and but Britain was capturing these people if they could, and then put them in concentration camps in Cyprus.
Right.
So Mother had gone down to interview them in Beirut, and was just horrified.
Wow.
I came back, I don't know where I was, but I came back and my closet was half empty from clothes that she had taken down and helping. So she decided in the United States we should know what was going on. So she would talk to anybody who would listen. She never.
And her connection to Zionism came from the Bible, of course.
Yes, yes. God had given Palestine to the Jews, and that's
So,
it.
do you remember any other kind of experiences like that when you were in Beirut or before Israel was declared, or with the refugees or anything? Or 'cause it's a very interesting
Well,
story.
of those refugees, yeah. I mean, I was well aware of that. And so anyway, she had been
So,
talking at a function where Justice Brandeis was listening to her, and he said, you know, you and your husband should write a book. And so then I was, 14? And so Mother said, well, if you will take over all the cooking, we'll go cool off in the basement and write. And so
your
then
mother
they
said to
sat
you?
down and write. Dad was recovering from a heart attack at that point, so,
what was the book? They wrote a book together?
well, it was yes. And that's Palestine, Land of Promise. And that was written before there was Palestine only, and before the state was established.
Of course.
Showing that you could
What was the book about, and who?
add more people to Israel. It has great possibilities. At that, he was putting through also a plan for the Jordan Valley Authority, such as we had in Tennessee Valley Authority, multiple use, and that has never occurred because politically it was impossible to bring in Mediterranean water at the logical place to do so because of land control that they did not
Politics.
control.
Right.
So that was never done, but that was the basis of greatly increasing the population.
What year was this book published? Do you remember?
About 1944.
1944. And again, the name of the title of the book is?
Palestine, Land of Promise,
And it is
and it was
written by
father.
Father. And Mother helped also, though.
Yeah, she was doing all the typing.
Right. But what was the essence of the book was what?
That Palestine could support many more people than it was.
And he was giving, now he didn't write a book about Lebanon. He
No.
didn't write a book about China.
No.
He didn't write a book, he chose to write a book about Palestine.
Yes,
Why?
because that's where things were happening. And why?
I mean, do you remember him telling you about his spiritual or political or historical connection to the Jews, to the land of Palestine? You know.
No, it was, of course, Mother did.
Yes.
But Dad was more reserved on religion. But he
So he writes this book. It gets published. And then
and translated to many 16 languages, I think.
and
He claimed and we also they didn't get any money from it at all. It was all donated.
it was done through Brandeis. No, is that correct?
Did
They publish it?
No, Knopf published it, I believe, in the first place.
So in 1948, Israel's declared a state, and your mother says to your father, "We have to go and help."
No, he did.
He said to mother,
Yes.
"We got to go."
Yes.
So what happens?
So they volunteered to go to Israel in, what was it,
48,
no, or later.
Later.
It was
51.
something like that.
Yeah.
And to help establish the Soil Conservation Service for Israel.
And he stayed there for a while.
Yes, and
Where
then
did they
he
li-
was
Where did they live? Do you remember?
Jerusalem.
They lived in Jerusalem.
Yes.
Did you ever go visit them in that period
No,
of time?
no. No, I shipped them a ton of food, though.
Let me tell you, that first decade was very hard economically.
Yeah.
Everything
And-
was rationed.
Yes.
So what happened when he went back to Israel in 1951? What's going on? I mean, he's coming with a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge. Here's a little country that's 2 years old.
You'll have to read the oral history more for that, because
Okay.
I wasn't there, and I was newly married and working, and
Sure. You had your own life. Began.
yes.
But what can you sum up for me his experience there that he had talked to you about being in Israel in those crucial years in the beginning of the establishment of the state?
He was excited about what could be done, the enthusiasm of the people he was working with, and one of his expressions was a pleasure of the people that he worked himself out of a job because they were learning and taking over so well.
Which is great.
And I mean, this is pleasure.
Yeah. So the people that he was training were starting to get it, and then he slowly would find himself out the door.
Yeah.
But that's why he came.
I mean, yes. I mean, he didn't come to stay forever.
Exactly.
Now, the FAO did take him on, Food and Agricultural Organization, so that he had some, I mean, we didn't have any money particularly, so that was very helpful.
So he gave up his career in the States for a while
Yes,
to do this?
yes.
And who was paying him?
Well, then FAO, the first year, he just volunteered.
Okay. And then,
Then after that,
and then
FAO.
he realized that he's got to stay and he's got to have
Yeah.
some income.
So
and,
the FAO started
FAO,
paying him a salary.
Okay.
So that was very helpful. And then he ended up teaching at Haifa Technion.
At the Technion.
Yes, for a few years.
What was
And then
he
they
teaching?
named after the School of Agricultural Engineering, they named after him at Haifa Technion. And then I visited with them in 1963. We went back to Israel.
Uh-huh.
And I was that was when we took the kids to Israel, and Mother then came and joined us. My husband, I wanted to take the kids to Europe, as I had done, and my husband then had a meeting that he was to attend in Israel, and I said, okay, this is it. Away we
The
go.
two dots together. and
We
let's
all
go.
went. I took the
So you
kids.
went back with everybody, with your kids, with your father, or with your mother.
My dad, I guess, was in the hospital then.
in Israel.
No, here. So he didn't go. It was just Mother and
So he didn't go. And then you
into
said,
Israel. But other than that, we
you
were.
said that he got some award from President Shazar or something, or from
That was
Katsir.
Katsir.
Was that after he'd passed away?
yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, it was. They did a memorial service for him at the presidential house.
When he had passed away?
Yes, after he passed away.
Really?
Yeah, and so I was with Mother. To that, we went back to Israel then.
Just you and Mother?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Well, I was very touched by it, and I think Mother was as well. That he was a very, very nice. We learned things you learned. That was what we learned about the Negev, for instance. Another thing, when we had gone back to China, I learned for the first time that Dad had sent seeds, which I remembered, to China after he had been there during the war, and Henry Wallace had taken them. And among them, Dad had thought back in northwest China that melons would be very good. So he sent some melon seeds, and that was popular all over China. Was the Wallace melon, which was actually Dad's melon, and this was kind of like going to Israel was the same. Finding out that you have the Negev because of Dad.
So a lot of his contribution was irrigating the Negev. There's a very famous little river in Israel called Hayarkon, the Yarkon River.
Yes, the Yarkon. Yes.
And the Yarkon was diverted because it would go from east to west, and it would go through Tel Aviv, and it would spill into the Mediterranean. But Ben Gurion diverted it down to the Negev, so that the Negev could be irrigated. But
Yes.
it backfired, because it did. And I'm actually interested if your father had anything to do with that, with the Yarkon River being diverted to the Negev.
I don't know.
They pumped it all to the Negev, but the river became a catastrophe, and till today, it's
What happened to it?
it just died, and all the life around it died, and it became polluted, and it was also a lot of it was
Salty?
not salty, but something happened to it, and it's just it was a catastrophe. But I know that also your father had some kind of idea about the Litani River in Lebanon,
Yes.
and bringing it down somehow to the Jordan River, like something. There was
Yeah,
right?
but
that's different.
Politically, that couldn't be done either.
Right.
It still flows to the ocean.
Yeah.
So, also, we're finding here that for the wildlife as well, and other reasons, you can't divert too much water. As the San Joaquin has been almost dried up, that's not so good. And where do the migrating birds get their food? We need to think of them as well.
What do you think your father would have thought about if he could have seen what has become of Israel now, like the Negev and the agriculture growing there, and he died in 1974. In 1974, Israel was not where they are today,
Yeah.
agricultural-wise. And what do you think if you would just have the opportunity to get in a car and drive down to the Negev and see what's going on there? There's vineyards in the Negev. There's wineries in the Negev.
Amazing. It would be wonderful.
Did he ever meet Ben Gurion or any people that of high, like in the administration? Somebody maybe like Levi Eshkol, who was in charge of.
I'm sure they did when they,
Yeah.
at some time, when they went back to Israel in the 50s.
Yeah, I'm talking about that. Yeah.
Yes.
Of course.
Of course, I was not with them, so
Right,
I don't know.
you
But
can't remember,
I know Mother was
Yeah.
good friends with, was it Rabin?
Was it who?
Anyway, Mrs. Rabin.
Mrs. Rabin, okay.
And so, yes,
Leah Rabin.
and anyway, I don't know all the
Okay,
people, but
okay.
they met a lot of them.
Listen, I think we're good.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you would like to tell me about your father? Is there anything else that you feel that we've missed, or?
Somebody recently asked, he was so serious, did he ever smile or something of the sort? And I said, oh, yes, he did, but he had twinkly eyes and a good laugh. But life is generally serious. Lots of things to
And
do.
he saw the world. He really saw the world. He saw
Yes.
the world at its best and at its worst.
Both, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, my dear.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm going to take a photograph